Several times I have come to this celebration when friends of mine got this award, but honestly, never in my wildest dreams I thought that one day I was going to be here. It's really, I am very grateful to receive this award, but it's also a humbling experience. When I got the news of the award and when I started preparing this talk yesterday, I started reviewing my life and seeing that, well, all the things that I should do better. I started analyzing myself, but then I thought, well, they gave me this award to make me happy, so I'm going to be happy, not to worry. I'm going to be happy. And tomorrow I'm going to start to worry and to try to improve, okay? I am especially touched by the fact that it's a faculty member from the Language and Literature Department who nominated me, because you all know that I commit a lot of crimes against the English language. Especially the phonetics, okay? So that is really touching. Thank you, Teresa McGarry, for nominating me. That amplitude of mind that you have and that quality of trying to look around and look meriting people really talks a lot about you. Thank you, Susan, Bob, Lindsay, and any other friend that I don't know, but that might have supported the nomination. Thank you to Phyllis, the Women Study Program, to Veronica, to Alison, all the people who put this event together. I have been very fortunate to have the opportunity of getting an education and to have a supporting family and wonderful friends, many of them who are here tonight. And I was born in Lima, Peru, South America, many, many years ago. And my father, I put a line there connecting to Lima just in case. And my father was a welder who had emigrated to Peru when he was 17 years old, not knowing a word of Spanish, and on his own. And he worked in a very old style of welding that he put on top of an iron table, he put pieces of wood, and there set a big fire, and there he put the piece of the machine or motor or, a truck that he was going to weld. In that case, the piece doesn't arch, doesn't wobble, it's much better for the welding. But it's very hard. So sometimes when I am in front of my computer tired, I do get tired, and I think of quitting for the day. I remember my dad, how he was able to stand in front of that fire for hours at a time with his blowtorch working. I mean, if he was able to stand in front of a fire for hours to work, how I'm not going to stay one more hour in front of a computer? My mother was born in a very small village in the northern part of Peru, and she grew up in a little town in the mountains, in the Andes. And there was no high school. There was an elementary school for girls, but no high school. So she really wanted to go to high school, and she asked her father to send her to a big city to go to high school. So, but there were no roads in those days, no highways connecting the big cities with the small town. So she always told me how she had to cross the Andes in mule and then go to the coast and take a ship to go to move to the city to go to high school. I only had to take a plane, okay? So we live in a rented house. We never lacked the basics, but we didn't have too many things either at home. But what I remember from both my parents is that they always, each one in his own or her way, in a very discreet way, they took care of others. We always had relatives living with us at home, and we Always when they knew that a friend was going through hard times, they invited them over for lunch and dinner continuously. That is the strongest memory I have from my childhood. And later, I went to the university and I met my husband there, and I was lucky to marry a man who always has put learning and ethical principles before money or power. And our home, there was never a discussion if we had to buy a book or something else. Books always won. And my 3 children, they took care total responsibility for their own homework, always. So they let mom do her homework. We sat at the same table, but they were working alone and I was working on my things. And now I have 3 grandchildren that whenever I am overwhelmed by work or tired, my daughter sends me a picture of those 3 babies and hey, it's like the day starts again, you know. When I was in high school, I liked math a lot. So obviously the only thing that I could think of was to become a high school math teacher. But the university was free, no tuition, we didn't have to pay tuition. So that was, and then later I got a scholarship, a Fulbright scholarship to go to get a master's degree at the University of Kansas. And later I got an assistantship to go to get a PhD. And I think that without all those opportunities, I wouldn't have been able to get an education. Because it's very different when you come from a family that, you know, the natural thing is to go to college. You just think, okay, how I'm going to finance it. But when university was not in the experience of my family, and then the decision is much difficult. You don't see it as a natural thing to do. And it takes a lot of decision. And so that is why I wish we could keep the cost of education as low as possible, including textbooks, because especially for women who always tend to postpone their own needs, and for people who have not had the college experience in their families, that is very important. It makes the decision much easier. When I was in high school, I liked math a lot, and so I wanted to become a high school math teacher, but in my second year of college, I took a statistics course, and I got totally hooked. Okay? I started, believe it or not, I was just, wow, I like this. So I started taking all the stat courses that they offer, and when they opened the major, those courses were being offered for the first time there, and when they opened the major, I just jumped into it, you know. Then later came the Fulbright scholarship that I learned about almost by chance, and it was interesting. Those words you have, especially young people, have trouble imagining how was life before the internet. You didn't have the internet to go and look for the catalogs of the universities or anything. I learned I had got the scholarship 10 days before I had to come, so I just packed and came. And for my surprise, when I arrived, the university didn't have a program in statistics that I wanted, it had in math. But I thought, if I go back home and I tell them that they didn't have the program I wanted, nobody's going to believe me, okay? They are going to say, ah yeah, she couldn't do it. So I just stayed. got the master's degree, and I went back the day after I defended my thesis. I stayed in Peru for 20 years. I worked 3 years in the Census Bureau, and then in the Census Office. That was very good because it gave me a touch of reality, of applications. And then I went, in the nights I was always working in the university, and then I went full-time to the university. And I had wonderful students, that motivated me. And also I wanted to continue learning, but books were not easy to get. We had a lot of restrictions in importations, and papers didn't come in PDF files yet. So, but we managed, and we always try to continue getting updated. And I used to organize seminars with friends, usually were female friends, the ones that follow me to do the seminars. And we used to meet by coincidence Wednesdays at 5 o'clock for years, doing a doing a seminar on time series analysis that we didn't have any course in Peru in those days on that topic. And we met in the office of one of us in the workplace. We work in different places, and when one of us had a newborn baby, we did the seminar in the house of the newborn baby so that the mother could, continue studying the seminar. I really was happy as a student and happy later as a faculty at San Marcos. 20 years later, we came, this time with my husband and kids, to the US again, and I went to, after one semester as a adjunct in Arizona, I went to Wyoming to get a PhD. So I was very happy in Laramie. I think that in part it was because Laramie is very peaceful, and we had had really political turmoil for a decade in Peru. So for me it was like an oasis of peace. And I enjoy every minute of the graduate program. It's something I would never, regret of doing it. And when people here in Johnson City ask me, how did you get from Peru to Johnson City? I said, by the way of Wyoming. Yes, direct route. So, but the point here that I want to make is that even with all the desire that I had to learn, it wouldn't have been possible without free tuition, scholarships. And so those things for me are very, very important. Also, in some points of my life, just out of a sense of duty or short-sightedness, I was about to make a decision that would have totally diverted from being here today and from the work I am lucky to do. And I was very fortunate that in those moments there was somebody, sometimes a relative, sometimes an acquaintance or a friend, who made me look at the big picture and think on all the options I had in order to make a better decision. So I am very reluctant to give advice to young people because they are the ones who are going to live with the consequences. But I believe in giving them all the information we can in order for them to see what options they have in order to make a good decision about their future. I am very conscious of how the opportunities for women have changed even in my lifetime. I know that at the beginning of the 20th century, even in Europe, brilliant female mathematicians were not allowed to teach in the university just because they were women. I have heard the stories in my own family how in the times of my grandmother, the girls were not sent to school and not even to read and write, even when their brothers were literate. So there has been a lot of change, but we have to remember that opportunities are not universal, not across the world. There are still many places in which women don't have those opportunities, and they are not even in the same place. They are not equal across the social economic spectrum. Opportunities are not, unfortunately, independent of income level. Women in academia, we still face some issues, and especially women in science. Well, that is at least what women in science think, because this is the world in which we live. And we feel that we still need to prove ourselves, that we are not taken, as good until we prove it. That sometimes when we need to be assertive and mark our ground and say what we think, we are labeled as aggressive. And I want to hope that this is because the experience of women in academia has been only for the last maybe 100 years, not even that, at least in big quantities. And I hope that in future generations, this is going to disappear. What worries me is that outside the academia, sometimes still women, the way women, the relationship with science and professions is perceived and math is not ideal. And what I am worried that still some people tell little girls that girls are not for math, that math is too difficult for girls. Because when you are young, if somebody tells you that something is difficult for you, you block. It happened to me with chess. Somebody said, oh, chess is too difficult for women. Block. Never learned how to play chess. But I was very fortunate that nobody said math is not for women. But we still have to do a lot of work with regard to that. And something that I would like to tell women who might have postponed and might dream going back for another degree or pursue more studies, it's never too late. Okay? I left 20 years between I got my first master when I was very young, right after college, in my very early 20s, and then 20 years, it passed 20 years. It was mainly because there was not a PhD program in statistics in Peru, so going for a program meant moving the whole family, leaving behind our parents. But I am so glad I did it. And I tell you, it's never too late. And now I want to share with you some of the things that I have found here at ETSU. Things that I like in teaching is designing new courses, teaching things that are useful for going to the workforce, statistical methods, use of statistical software, sharing with my students what I learned while doing consulting, and finding new ways of teaching things. And if I had to pick one thing that is my favorite, it would be the introduction of the ideas of hypothesis testing, not using formulas, but just thinking, using a binomial table. And we have published two papers, one with Corliss, one with Yali, with regard to this. And everything came from something that happened to me during consulting. In one of my first year here, I think, a student had done an experiment with ducks in the lake of the VA campus, and she had a small sample, and then I realized that most books always warn you, most intro books, they say, these formulas are for large samples. Don't use them for small samples. But they don't tell you what to do with the small samples. So that was the inspiration, and from there, a lot of things have camp. So I am very grateful to that student and the dads that are there in the picture. And I also like to teach, to write teaching material. So when I was involved in the Symbiosis project, I wrote a lot of class notes for my students, beautiful group of students. And then when the project ended, I said, I'm not going to let all those notes die in my computer. So that was the origin of the book, the intro book. And we are using it in special sections of Math 1530 for the pre-med students and for the honors students. And in research, we usually hear about statistics in research in two contexts, either using statistical methods to do research in other fields, and that is, in that I have had the opportunity of collaborating with researchers in medicine, public health, and biology. But also we have research in statistics itself. And research in statistics is mainly connected to creating new methods, new plots, new tests, new ways of calculating confidence intervals and things of that sort. And we not only have to design it, but to prove that it's useful. If it's a test, we have to show that it's more powerful than the existing test, at least in some circumstances, or that the confidence intervals have better coverage, or that the plot tells us something that other plots don't tell us. I would say that a considerable part of my research in statistics has been in the area of kurtosis. Kurtosis is a very old topic, but there's always something new to pull from there. Okay? You are all familiar with the normal distribution, the bell shape. So think on the center and think on the tails. Kurtosis has to do with how much mass you put in the tails and the center of a distribution. And I am going to refer only to 3 of those papers, and very quickly, don't worry. But the first definition of kurtosis, a measure of kurtosis, comes from 1905, and it deals with the 4 power of the standardized variable. So let's say that the tails are very important. So I put things upside down and define a new family where the center is important. But guess what? Center and tails are related. So they tell you the same story, but we get estimators that have a little better behavior. They are not so influenced by outliers. And once we published that paper, it happened something very nice. One of the best academic experiences of my life. That is, a well-known statistician Samuel Coates read that paper, and he wrote me an email. I almost fainted when I received his email. I still remember the shock, okay? I would have never dared to approach him. But he said, hey, dig deeper, and we started collaborating. And we got to publish 4 papers together. We never saw each other. Everything was done by mail, email, phone. And I am just very fortunate that collaboration happened. And one of the last things we did was to come up with an easy way. His dream was to classify all distributions according to where the high kurtosis came from, peak or tail. We never got there, but I told him, let's start looking an easy way to identify peak and tail. So we came up with this idea of contrasting any distribution with a uniform distribution and identifying their peak and tails. And the most recent, one of the recent papers is, most of you are familiar with the box plot. That is a way of representing data by, you all are familiar with the histogram, and you're familiar with the box plot. Well, the polyplot is something in between. It still points statistics, graphs statistics, but it gives a better idea of the shape of the distribution. And this is also a story that it's funny because it didn't start, I didn't sit and say, I'm going to modify the box plot. Now it looks like I sat there and I tried to make some modification to the box plot. But everything started because I proved a certain thing almost by chance. And then I wanted to use it, of course. And I started doing graphs with it. And then the graph looked ugly. And then I was on vacation and I was visiting a museum. And I saw a cubist painting. And I said, why I don't connect the dots? And that is how the polyplot came. But always, when we publish a paper, we almost never look behind. It's like, okay, done. And the most exciting project is the one we're working in this moment, even if it's little, but it has the mystery of the unsolved. So right now, I am working with a colleague from Applied Math and a student, and we are defining a new function that represents a certain characteristic of the location of points in a plane. And of course, there's also the crawl project. Today, the students in the crawl project did their presentations, several presentations in a meeting in Knoxville of the American Entomological Society of America. But something that gives me great pleasure and that was not in my job description when I came to ETSU is the statistical consulting that I do. And it's a special type of consulting. I don't let people drop their data in my office and come and pick up their results. No, they have to sit with me and suffer with me in front of the computer. So there's a whole learning experience. What is particularly important because it's the research of the researcher or it's the thesis of the student. And so we work it, together. And it's exciting because when somebody comes to my office, I never know what they bring, if I am going to be able to solve it. And many times I have to confess, you have to apply this, but I don't know too much about it. Or I don't have the software to do it. Some other times they know very well what they want to know, and they just need a friend to talk it over and maybe some little detail. But other times I am capable of helping them. And I see the diversity of cases coming from many fields. I put the list there. I'm not going to repeat them, but I tell you, few things in life are so exciting as be sitting there with the researcher in front of that computer waiting for that p-value to come up on the screen, and we are like this. And then when it comes and it doesn't invalidate the hypothesis that the researcher had, we both scream, yeah! I enjoy it very, very much. Also, it's an inspiration to know what things are important from the point of view of applications to study, what new things I should study, and provides of interesting stories to tell my students. And some of them result in long-term collaborations. And several of my consulting cases are here tonight, so they can recognize their cases there. But some of them result in long-term collaborations, and also I meet interesting people, I make new friends, and my nomination for the award tonight also came from a consulting case, for what I am very, very grateful. Sorry. Well, it was just a slide that says thank you. Thank you very much.